Chapter 5. Introductions on a Train. Not long after, the Potter family made its way through the entrance at King's Crossing. They were delayed for a bit as both James and Jim had to glad hand with various friends and hangers-on. A shy, chubby kid named Longbottom was there with his grandmother, a stern-looking old biddy with what appeared to be a stuffed vulture mounted on her head, and his rather creepy-looking uncle who kept lecturing the boy about not losing his toad. Harry actually assumed that was some strange magical euphemism until the boy pulled an actual toad out of a pocket to prove he still had it. Harry shrugged and shook his head. The ginger kid from Madame Malkin's was also there, along with a small army of relatives, including another set of identical twins who seemed to idolize James Potter for his former juvenile delinquency, and a young girl whose eyes were fixed on Jim with breathless adoration. Oh, and they had to stop for pictures, as the Daily Prophet was on hand to chronicle the boy who lived as he started off for Hogwarts, and so wanted pictures of him and his parents standing next to the train. This was apparently something the Potters were used to, so much so in fact that they completely forgot about Harry again. So did most everyone else, as a photographer nearly knocked him down. After a few minutes, he leaned over to Longbottom's grandmother, who at least had the decency to seem appalled on his behalf at how the Potters were acting, and asked her to let his parents know he'd went ahead to find a seat. Once aboard, Harry deliberately sought a compartment near the rear of the train, hoping it might take a while for Jim to find him. After the train pulled out, he sat alone for 20 minutes reviewing his copy of Dilworth's Guide to Wizarding Etiquette before the door opened, and a bushy-haired girl stepped into his compartment. "Excuse me, but by any chance have you seen a toad? A boy named Neville has lost his."
"Blonde first year. Yeah, I noticed them both on the platform before we left, but I haven't seen either him or his toad since."
Harry thought for a moment.
"You should ask one of the prefects. I think there's a summoning charm that should help, but it will be years before we're expected to know it. The incantation is a Kyo, but I don't know the wand movements. Or if that doesn't work, I'm sure they know some kind of detection spell that would help."
"Oh, that is a good idea, thank you." Then her eyes lit up. "Is that a book on wizarding etiquette? How interesting." And then the girl was off, rattling off a startling number of personal details, how much she liked reading, how she was the first witch in her family and hoped she wouldn't be disadvantaged by that, how she'd read every single textbook assigned to first years and even done a few spells, how her parents were both dentists, all on a single breath, before finally pausing to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Hermione Granger."
"Harry Potter, a pleasure to meet you."
Potter, by any chance are you related to Jim Potter?
Harry took a breath, and his fake smile slid back into place. Interestingly, Hermione Granger seemed a bit more astute than any of the Potters, and her face registered a mild concern, as if she'd just said something rude but wasn't sure what.
"Yes, he's my brother."
Really, I've read several books about him, and none of them mention him having a twin brother.
"I know, I've been living with relatives since I was a baby for reasons."
Reasons.
Harry paused and sighed.
"Miss Granger, two things. First, I just found out about my parents, my brother and this whole boy who lived thing about a month ago, which I have to say is a bit of a sore subject right now and no offense, one I don't wish to discuss with someone I've just met."
Hermione blushed.
I understand. I apologize for any offense.
"None taken."
And the other thing.
Harry hesitated.
"Well, now I'm worried that I might offend you. I promise I don't mean to, but you say you've read all the textbooks already. Have you read any books on wizarding etiquette?"
Hermione stiffened at the preemptive apology, but then was intrigued by his question.
No, I haven't. There weren't any mentioned on the list we were given, and it didn't occur to me to ask. I mean, other than the magic, Hogwarts is still just another British boarding school, isn't it? It's not like we're moving to Japan or Dubai or someplace that different.
"Actually, I've been cramming for the last month, and from what I've pieced together, it's a lot like moving to a foreign country. See, there's this thing called the Statute of Secrecy that was enacted about 300 years ago that requires near-total separation between wizards and muggles, and Wizarding Britain takes it really seriously. That's 3 centuries in which most wizards ignored what muggles were doing as much as possible." Most wizards don't know much about TV and movies and nothing at all about computers or the space program. With magic, you can instantly fix cavities and other tooth-related issues, so most wizards probably won't know what a dentist is, or if they've heard the word, will probably assume your parents yank teeth out with rusty pliers and no anesthetic. Now, I don't mean to say the wizarding world is backwards. It's actually a lot more progressive than the Muggle world in some ways, but weirdly formal in others. For example, wizards don't have any problems at all with the idea of a woman in a position of high authority like Minister of Magic or Chief Warlock, but a lot of them seem to get really touchy if you don't properly refer to a woman as Madame if she's married and Miss if she's not. In a lot of ways, I think going away to school in Japan or Dubai might involve less culture shock than where we're headed.
Hermione sat down with a concerned look on her face.
I suppose it might.
She said slowly, "Is that why you made a point of calling me Miss Granger?" Harry held up his copy of Dilworth's.
There's a whole chapter in here on when it is or is not appropriate to call someone by their first name. My impression is that to most people it doesn't matter, but to the wizards and witches who run the country, it matters a lot.
The girl nodded at that.
But why did you think I might be offended at that?
Well, you're obviously smart, but you are obviously proud of your Muggle heritage, which is fine. My mother was a Muggle born and she's a Hogwarts professor teaching Muggle studies. Being half-blooded and Muggle-raised myself, I don't have any problem at all with Muggle-borns. But the last Wizarding War, the one that ended when Jim Potter destroyed you-know-who, was started by purebloods who wanted to kill all the Muggle-borns because of a crazy belief that they were somehow stealing magic away from pureblood children. And the Wizarding War before that was started by purebloods who wanted to conquer the Muggle world outright because they thought wizards were just naturally superior, and it was only proper that we should rule over the Muggles for their own good. I certainly don't think you should hide your Muggle heritage, just as I don't plan to, but I think our time at Hogwarts might be a lot less enjoyable if we don't address the fact that, well, we're the outsiders here.
The two continued to talk for a good 5 minutes, about what little they both knew about wizarding politics and history, about the incredibly vague definitions of pureblood, half-blood, and Muggleborn, about the vast number of unwritten rules that mark Muggleborns as outsiders, about how in the otherwise highly secular wizarding Britain it was a horrible faux pas to take the Lord's name in vain, so most people use Merlin as a generic expletive.
Honestly,
Said Harry.
I only care about this stuff because my father, James Potter, is from a very old pureblood family, and someday, Merlin willing, I'll inherit his seat in the Wisengamot, so I'm trying not to accidentally insult anyone important needlessly.
Merlin's willing.
She repeated while shaking her head.
That's going to take getting used to. Any other major blunders I should avoid making, bearing in mind that I don't plan on changing my principles just to appease bigots.
Me neither, and like I said, I don't think most wizards care about etiquette unless you do something very offensive or the wizard is a pureblood from a very old family, but better safe than sorry.
Harry thought for a second.
Oh, here's a big one that's important to us since we're just now starting school. Never raise your hand in class.
What?
Hermione said incredulously.
Well, more specifically, never raise your hand in class unless you're asking the teacher a question or they have clearly asked for a volunteer, usually after someone else has tried to answer and flubbed it. Whenever the teacher first asks a question, he usually has someone specific that he plans on asking but is just giving the student a few seconds to prepare an answer. My mother was very specific about this. Apparently, when she was a first year, she was treated as an outcast and couldn't figure out why. Finally, someone took pity and told her that raising her hand every single time the teacher asked a question implied that she thought her classmates were too dumb to know the answer if called upon.
Well,
She said.
I would never have considered it like that if you hadn't explained it to me.
She blushed slightly.
Before Hogwarts, I went to a gifted school where classroom participation was a big part of the grade. I'd have made a complete fool of myself if I'd gone into Hogwarts with the same attitude.
Harry nodded sagely.
There's a lot of fiddling stuff like that can cause newcomers to this world like us to stick out like a sore thumb if we're not careful. Basically, Miss Granger, you and I are about to start our first year at Oxbridge, you as a scholarship student, me as a legacy raised abroad, and neither one of us having been raised to know anything about Oxbridge culture.
Hermione looked down at the floor, It was a lot to take in.
Do you think, Mr. Potter, that I'll be discriminated against because my parents are muggles?
Harry hesitated.
I'm not sure. Personally, I reckon I'll be treated like an outsider to some degree, at least at the start, and I'll have to figure out to react from there. I'm sure some people will be biased against both of us because of our heritage. Of course, not everyone will feel that way, and even the bigots will hopefully be somewhat restrained since their side lost the last war.
He paused.
Have you thought about what house you want into?
I was hoping for Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Why? Do they have different attitudes towards Muggleborns?
Well, all I really know on that topic is what my parents told me, so take this with a grain of salt. A lot of Slytherins followed you-know-who during the last war, and I'm sure some of their children will be among our peers, so I'd expect them to be hostile to Muggleborns and probably to the brother of the boy who lived. Not all I hope, but it's to be expected. The Ravenclaws are the most academically focused, so you might like that, but they're very traditional and have a reputation for elitism, so it might be kind of cutthroat. The Hufflepuffs pride themselves on tolerance and accepting everyone, but the price they pay for it is to be looked down upon by the other houses as lacking standards. My father called them the House of Duffers, but I doubt that's true, seeing as how there have been